Ben.o.cichlid here. Thank you so much for tuning in. I want to talk to you today about super oxygenating your tank. And I'm going to start with this. What is this thing? A disc that you throw in a discus event in the Olympics? No, this is actually a air stone, an enormous air stone. Look at the size of this thing compared to my... This is like the mothership of all air stones. So I'm going to install this in the 150 behind me, and I'm going to install it underneath the massive amount of media that I have in that wet dry trickle down area of the sump. So this is a trick to super oxygenate the bacteria that is developing on that media. Certainly a trick you could not do in a canister filter, which is of course an enclosed sort of vacuum system, that so you're only getting as much oxygen as exists in the tank. So if the tank is poorly oxygenated without a lot of water movement or surface tension breakup, the bacteria in the canister is going to suffer. So this is why you want to have a lot of water motion, a lot of tension, surface breakup, especially if you're using canisters. And even during the cycling process, when you're getting a tank ready, you really need to have a lot of oxygenation going on, because that's a big part of the health of your beneficial bacteria. So this massive disc is going to be installed underneath all of that media, and it's going to be sending bubbles up through the media and doing a job of super oxygenating the media. And this is going to help the health, the growth of the beneficial bacteria in that chamber. So let's go ahead and get started on that, and certainly share your thoughts below. Definitely provide a lot of oxygen for your fish. I want you to notice in some of my videos, especially recent ones, that my fish are not working their mouths. They're not gasping, they're not hanging around the top, and their mouths are not going, they're not open and shutting continuously. When you see that with your fish, what you're doing is you're stressing those fish with too low of a level of oxygen, dissolved oxygen in the water, and the fish are having to work a bit, struggle a bit to get enough oxygen. It's almost like you having to breathe through a straw. And so you don't want to do that. This will stress your fish. It can weaken your fish and is not optimum. So if you see your fish doing that, improve the oxygen in your tank by adding air stones, creating more surface tension breakup by repositioning the outputs of your canisters. If you have hang-on back filters, that's a very good way, of course, to break up the surface tension. And certainly air stones work well, redirecting the outputs of your canister filters so they create breakup, create a splash of sorts at the top of your tank. These are all ways of doing that. Also keep in mind that where the oxygen exchange, where the bad gases are escaping and oxygen is entering, is at the top, certainly at the top of the tank where the breakup is occurring. And so the water near the bottom of the tank is usually less oxygen rich. This is why you circulate the water with things like wave makers and Powerheads, right? You circulate water to get some of that more oxygen rich water to the lower parts of the tank. This is also why you'll notice that the intakes of any filters that I have are usually low in the tank, because they're pulling some of that less oxygenated water out of the tank and into the filtration system, whether it's an HOB or a canister. And then when that is then returned, because I position my outputs in a way to create oxygenation of that water, when it gets returned, it gets oxygenated. So I pull water out from the bottom, oxygenate it, and then return it to the tank. So so let's do this. Let's do this project real quick, and let's really super oxygenate the water, and let's really help that beneficial bacteria to really develop on the media. All right, let's get going. Thank you so much for tuning in, my friends. Much appreciated.
Well, the first step was the arduous task of having to remove all of that media that I have in that first chamber. I've sped this up because you certainly don't need to be looking at me doing this. It took a while to get all of that out of there, and I'll tell you, I gained a real appreciation for how much media you can get into a sump. I mean, this is like a bucket and a third. We have here like what, maybe 7 gallons of media, or maybe more, and probably the equivalent of 4 or 5 FX6s or 704B SunSun's worth of media in that first chamber, and this doesn't even count the additional 2 chambers that I could conceivably put additional beneficial bacteria into. Certainly always cover your beneficial bacteria in tank water, never use tap water, to keep it wet when you're doing work on your filters. And this will ensure that your media doesn't, your beneficial bacteria in your media doesn't die while you're doing some maintenance. And so I did that and kept the media nice and wet during the entire process. The fish, of course, didn't know what the heck was going on, but they seemed to be doing okay throughout the process. But I continued to have water circulation occurring throughout this transition by running the 704B that you can see here under the tank, which I have full of sponges. I went ahead and used the Python to then clean up that first chamber. One of the things I like about Pythons is you can attach them to a faucet, run the water, and you can siphon at any level, including below the level of the faucet. And as you can see here, I was able to pull out a fair amount of detritus and waste that had settled at the bottom of the first chamber. If waste is going to settle anywhere in my particular sump system, it's going to be in that first chamber because it is blocked off by a sponge. So before anything leaves that first chamber, it has to work through a block sponge. So this would be the area where any detritus that might have gotten past the pinky floss that is on the drip tray, this is where it would settle. And of course, as I went through various evolutions of setting up this sump, some of this got in here. And so this was a great opportunity to go ahead and clean this section out so I could drop the air stone into a relatively clean first chamber. The second and third chambers tend to look very pristine, mostly because the water moving from here into those chambers goes through a sponge. I then dropped in the large disc air stone, attached it to the fluval, which is now running this air stone and the algae scrubber. And as you can see, it created some great bubbles. I was then ready to put everything back together. So I was going to rinse that pinky floss out. I put all the media back in, and we were good to roll and get the show on the road here. Because the fish, because they behaved, I went ahead and gave them a frozen krill treat. You can see here they really do like it. The Venusis and the polystigma ran off with some pretty big chunks and were successful at playing keep away, and they sat off in the corner and slowly worked it down their throats. I thank Paul the Inventory King for the tip on picking up the frozen krill. I think it was a hit with my guys. So I went ahead and got everything back together and started the sump running. And as you can see here, the results are great. Fish and water look perfect.
So there you have it. So let me know what you think in the comments below, and certainly hit that bell so that you can get notifications of new videos, and certainly come and join us over at the ben.o.cichlid Facebook group, and follow on Instagram. I'll post it all over here, and of course down below you can read about it as well. Okay, you can follow on Instagram at ben.o.cichlid. ben.o.cichlid. All right. Thank you so much, friends, for your support of the channel. You are appreciated. The subscriptions continue to grow. That is very appreciated. I think we're going to be at 10,000 by the end of 2018, and that to me, it just blows my mind.